Hello and welcome back. I hope you're all doing great. And if you're here for the first time, thank you for tuning in. So, there's been a story that's been making the rounds. I've been seeing a lot of responses online, and this was the response to Meghan's article with The Cut, where she had this interview. And there's one line that has been picked apart. I'm telling you, and you've seen it by the title of this video. We're going to be doing some debunking. Yeah. So, let's go back to the article from thecut.com, and I'm going to read it verbatim, and then we're going to take apart the myths that are floating around that Meghan had apparently or allegedly compared herself to Nelson Mandela. Of course, we know she did not. So, of course, let's get into this. The article says this, and I quote, "She, as in Meghan, recalls a moment from the 2019 London premiere of the live-action version of The Lion King. Quote, I just had Archie, Meghan said. It was such a cruel chapter. I was scared to go out, end quote. A cast member from South Africa pulled her aside. Meghan says, quote, he looked at me and he's just like light. He said, I just need you to know. When you married into this family, we rejoiced in the streets, the same we did when Mandela was freed from prison. Now, the article goes on to say, of course, she knows she's no Mandela, but perhaps even telling me this story is a mode of defense, because if you are a symbol for all that is good and charitable, how can anybody find you objectionable? How can anybody hate you? So let's, of course, take all this into context. Now, of course, the article does say that she knows she is no Mandela, right? And this is what came before that statement. She said this, in her own life, Meghan's response to being typecast seems to be to lean into all the positive things her story symbolizes. She understands what her ascent meant to Black Britons, for whom she is a sign of progress, and to women for whom she's a working mom and a signal boost to the issues that affect them, as in paid parental leave, equal pay. Even though she avoids reading her own press, Meghan knows people see her this way. So that's what led into the story where she has that memory from The Lion King and speaking with the South African cast member. So that's the context of the statement. So she, as the article points out, knows that she is not comparable to Nelson Mandela. She talks about what her story symbolizes. Now, are we going to go back in time and erase the discussion and the dialogue that was going on surrounding the royal wedding between Harry and Meghan? That was the conversation that was going on. People were talking about what this meant for the British monarchy to have a woman who was mixed race coming into that old stuffy institution, where in recent history, I'm talking like when we have cameras and video, that we had not witnessed a royal member who was, Black or mixed race. Of course, we know that we cannot ignore Queen Charlotte, who was married to King George III and who herself was an anti-slavery advocate. So, of course, we're not talking about Meghan being the only biracial member of the royal family, but we're talking about recent history. So, of course, there was a lot of conversations about what it meant and the significance of the celebration. And you know what? I'm going to be reading a couple of excerpts, and this will be from outlets in the UK so that you can know that I'm not framing this through any perspective that can be refuted. They themselves are saying this about what Harry and Meghan's union meant. So this is from theguardian.com around the time of the royal wedding. And this is a quote. It says, in this context, talking about the royal wedding, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's engagement represents something genuinely different from everything that's gone before. Their marriage will bring into reality what the British establishment lacked the imagination to even conceive of as possible 17 years ago. And why does she reference something 17 years ago? Someone had said a couple of years ago that Prince Charles should have married a Black woman. Okay, that's its own story. And of course, there was quite a bit of, and the comment wasn't taken lightly, just to say the least. So it goes on to say that a senior royal can love and marry someone whose ethnic heritage is not just different to his own, but the heritage that has always been most othered in Britain, Black and African. And the article goes on talking about the author saying that she struggled growing up feeling that the monarchy were fundamental to Britishness, but that the Britishness they represented was one that excluded her. So for her, it made other people perceive being truly British and Black as incompatible identities. She goes on to write this, saying that Meghan's race has been the subject of such frequent and cryptic references that when I first read about her, having never seen her before, I had genuinely no idea what the commentators were on about. Quote, not in the society blonde style, quote, of Harry's relationships past, we are told, and straight outta Compton, quotes. Typically dog whistle British code for the fact that she had Black ancestry, in a code which Harry took the remarkable step of calling out in a statement. And as a note, you can tell in the article that even to the author, the wedding at the time meant a huge deal. So here we have from Sky.com, a British outlet, which says this. This is their article about the time of the wedding. Will Meghan and Harry's wedding change views on racism and diversity in the UK? And just below the lead, you can see that they write, a blogger tells Sky News that Meghan Markle's entry into the royal family will be, quote, more powerful than most people can realize, end quote. Interesting. Two snippets of the article, it says this, that with 2 weeks to go until the royal wedding, Sky News has spoken to bridal experts, academics, and community workers for a special report exploring whether Meghan Markle can make any difference to race equality in Britain. It comes after some have described Harry and Meghan's wedding as a social game changer for Black Britain, a mixed-race American actress whose ancestors were slaves marrying a white British prince. So that's quite interesting as well, and I will read another excerpt from a Sky article around the same time. And Sky News also came out with a piece on the wedding, and this is the title, Meghan Markle's Potential Impact or Lack of on Black Britain. And this article just goes and has a sampling of the population on the royal wedding, talks to some people who rejoiced at the prospect of Meghan joining them. They spoke to Black Britons, and the article says that Robert could barely conceal his joy. Smiling from ear to ear, he said, quote, see a member of the royal family marrying someone from an African background, a mixed-race person, that's a very big milestone of achievement. I'm very proud, he goes on to say, that we have one of our own in the royal family. Great Britain is a melting pot, and for the royal family to take such a big step, accepting a lady of color into the family, that's a very huge, magnificent step. End quote. The article, by the way, also spoke to some people who said this, and I quote, they said that Meghan was described as, quote, not Black enough by many people he spoke to. And it does harken back to the fact that Meghan has always spoken about that, the struggle with self-identity as a mixed-race person and sometimes feeling like she didn't even fit in. So that's a moment to ponder as the Black community and putting, those kinds of limitations on people who do have African descent. And it should be a moment to consider and to be very compassionate about using that kind of terminology. Not Black enough, it's absolutely abhorrent in my opinion. So the article is quite, fair and balanced. Once again, from skynews.com. So that's a British article. So why would they go out of their way trying to ask people what it meant for Meghan and Harry to have that union if in fact it was just a run-of-the-mill thing for the royal family? So let's broaden the horizons of this. Let's go on to some US magazines. So let's do Forbes.com, and I'll just spotlight here the headline so that you can know, the kind of feeling and the type of reportage that was surrounding the royal wedding and how it focused heavily on the symbolism and the importance of their nuptials. And Forbes.com writes and says, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's royal wedding, the race factor and its effect on the British monarchy. That's Forbes. The Washington Post also writes and says this of their wedding, and this is in one of the articles. They say, but with Meghan Markle, there are layers of history and culture to dissect. Every new development in the run-up to her wedding prompts conversations, think pieces, and wishes. Is this a sign of progress in post-Brexit Britain? Will she remind the world that the United States is proud of its diversity? Is the most fascinating aspect of this moment the fact that under almost any other circumstances, an interracial marriage would no longer be fascinating at all? So of course, they talk about the importance of her not only being in that interracial relationship just as a norm, but what it would mean for her to be in an interracial relationship with Prince Harry, with his own history as a member of the British royal family. So they themselves are saying this. And Reuters takes it straight back to the US and says this in their article. For some African Americans, Meghan Markle is cause for celebration. Gee, I wonder why. So of course, we do know now that Meghan joining the royal family created a stir because she is mixed race, American, an activist, you know. She was outspoken. Yeah, she wasn't just gonna become someone who was gonna marry in just for the privileges and remain, you know, happily in the background, sucking the taxpayers dry, yeah? So we'll cover a couple more outlets from around the world. WeOnNews.com, they talk about Meghan being the mixed-race actress set to marry Britain's prince, taken around the time of the royal wedding. This article says this, quote, Markle's inclusion into Britain's royal family is a momentous one. For years, the family has married into royalty or within aristocratic families. Kate Middleton perhaps being an exception, but white skin has dominated the family for centuries, and Meghan would be the first mixed-race woman to be married into the Windsor family. And you know what? People talked about the nuptials, saying that it was quite historic and momentous. That was quoted over and over again because it was a radical departure from their past and a general shift in race relations. For goodness sake, the British monarchy were colonizers. And just as recent as being an African myself, it's very interesting to see the countries in Africa celebrating 50 years of independence and on, you know, recent history talking about that. So yes, the House of Windsor were embracing change with accepting Meghan. And it was a victory for women who as well is a very staunch women's advocate. And people looked at her and her mom, especially on the wedding, and applauded them, their courage, the way they conducted themselves. And of course, as we look back on the footage and seeing how Meghan going through so much with the press, with her, you know, family, what was happening with her dad, and she just was so graceful in the way she handled herself. So, were there in fact any celebrations in South Africa? Did people there and all over the world, because this wedding was described as a global event, did people all over the world understand, all over the world, people in former colonies understand the impact and importance of Meghan joining the royal family? Of course we did. Of course. And you know why I'm going to call it a global event? Because the timesonline.com called it a global event. And you'll see me taking screen grabs as I talk about some of this stuff. So this is an article here from timeslive.co.za. That's a South African outlet, for those of you who'd like to know. And the article is titled, Prince Harry's Mzansi fans will be tuning in for the royal wedding. And it said this, a poll shows that Prince Harry, who first visited South Africa as a child shortly after his mother, Princess Diana, passed away, is the most popular British royal in Mzansi with an approval rating of 42%. And half of the country is predicted to be tuning in on Saturday to watch a live broadcast of the American actresses Meghan Markle marry the British prince, who supports orphans in Lesotho and is an energetic fundraiser for HIV/AIDS initiatives as well as conservation causes on the continent. It also talked about by the time that Meghan had a 19% approval rating from South Africans. The survey carried out online among adults aged under 65 finds the Queen and Prince Harry are the most liked members of the royal family overall around the world. And they said this, in South Africa, Prince Harry is the most liked member with 42% ahead of the Queen's 30%. And this is compared to 25% of South Africans who have a regard for Prince William. So Harry was more important. When it comes to the upcoming wedding itself, around 1 in 4, 27% worldwide, say that they are at least fairly interested in news about it. South Africans show the second highest interest levels, 49%, after India with 54%, much higher than the global average. So that shows that South Africans were very interested. And according to All Africa, they spoke about the wedding and they went to talk about, a lot of the details. But this is a quote that stood out to me. It said, "Proof of the wedding's excitement can be seen around Africa, but particularly in South Africa, where high teas have been arranged at hotels around Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban, at a price, of course. Cucumber sandwiches, cake, and bubbly thrown in for good measure. While watching the proceedings on a quote big screen, a street party has been thrown in for good measure, and I'm almost certain Prince Harry would have loved to have been there, although in a manner of speaking, he will be." Even in Kenya, in my home country, the event was also marked with extravagant affairs, one charging 1 million shillings for the occasion, and that's according to allafrica.com. So of course, we can see that there was quite a bit of excitement about the royal wedding. So for those taking a laugh on what Meghan said, it really does show that just with a bit of research, you could have proved that a lot of things she was saying made sense. She was not being self-aggrandizing. I think she was speaking to the importance of the symbolicness of the moment, of the union between her and Prince Harry. So you can see quite a bit of importance being put on that wedding at the time. And I'm pretty sure in the upcoming days, we will get to hear more from especially the person who told Meghan his experience witnessing that wedding and what it meant to him and his community there in South Africa. And let me tell you one thing. For those countries that were former colonies of the UK, with all due respect, the British monarchy, it's not something that people check for. I'm just gonna say this right there. People don't tune in for, just the random events. Meghan made it interesting because people saw themselves reflected in her. And I think people have said this over and over again. People were not checking for them. With all due respect, I'm sure the rest of the other members have things that they do that are admirable, they're passionate about. But people who have been in countries that were colonized do not check for them. So that's something that is just a fact. Even I do remember a certain conversation about the time of the wedding where some people were not too concerned with, a royal wedding in the UK, but the element of Meghan made people tune in. Not only in countries where people had gotten their independence from the UK, from colonization. Also, I'm talking about people in US and other places that were just not checking for the royal family. The fact that Meghan was there, a woman of color, a woman who had African heritage, people thought, oh, we were happy for her and wanted to tune in. And for those who have that connection with Prince Harry and his work in Africa, wanting to tune in and support him. So for people to have this dismissiveness of what that moment between them uniting meant, I don't think that's an attitude that can be excused because that's trying to rewrite history. It was momentous. And as we've seen how the years have unfolded, that the tabloid media indeed drove Meghan out. And people at the time expressed doubt, just to being one single person of color, whether she could really effect change. And as we've seen, they had to get away from it all. So it's not painting with that, huge brushstroke saying that everyone is this and that, everyone is an ist or an ism, but it does show that they had to get away from it all, so something wasn't going right. And for those who supported them through it in UK and other countries all over the world, I'm sure they saw your support and were so heartened by it. But at the end of the day, they chose their mental health. They chose to step away from all of that. And yeah, we can't deny history. People rejoiced. People in my own country, we tuned in. People in the US, some stayed up throughout the night. They had to deny themselves sleep to tune into that wedding. So it meant quite a bit. It was momentous. It was symbolic. And it was transcendent, even above Harry and Meghan. That moment was truly bigger than the both of them. But their love is what endures, and that's what matters. So I'm hoping that the person who said that to Meghan will just step up and hopefully we can see a correction of the narrative that Meghan was just, trying to pump herself up. It wasn't about her. And we, of course, know it was not John Kani. I absolutely love him, by the way. It wasn't him that said that to Meghan. He wasn't even in the UK. He himself said it. So I hope some truth can prevail. And hopefully the UK tabloid outlets and those in the mainstream who just love to pile on can hopefully learn from history. It's not cool, by the way. You've seen how Meghan was covered as she joined the royal family straight out of Compton, almost, talking about Meghan's mom having dreadlocks and them being from the wrong side of town and on and on. And now the pylon talking about that the fact that Harry and Meghan getting married meant little to nothing. It's not cool, it's not fair, it's not right, and it's rewriting history. It's absolutely abhorrent in my opinion. And once again, bringing attention to that commentary, that negativity, that Meghan was not, quote, black enough. That's the other side of the coin as well. You know, we can't have that even within the community. We have to call that out. It's so wrong, right? So I hope there are lessons to be learned all around. And now I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. And if you can share this video as well, let's get the truth out. So, as always, I'd like to thank those who support this channel. To my Patreon, PayPal, and membership supporters, I want to say thank you. I want to give a special shout out right now to you, Cookies and Cream. Thank you so much for your support of this channel. Thank you to you, Dorothy Roz. You are so dear to me. Thank you for your giving to this channel. Thank you so much to you, Gail Tapscott, as well. I appreciate your giving always and your support for me. Your long-time support has been so meaningful. And also special thank you to those who gave during the live. I want to say thank you to Black Queen. Thank you for giving during the last video. It means so much to me. Once again, thank you to all who like, comment, and share. I appreciate you. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share. Let the algorithm know you enjoyed what you watched. Once again, share it. Let's get the truth out there. I love you all. Leave your thoughts. I want to know them all in the comment section. And I will catch you in the next one. Have a blessed one.